Good morning, everybody. Hello, LinkedIn. Welcome to The Bloody Truth. I am joined by the wonderful Beth Thomas. Hello and welcome to The Bloody Truth.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here.
Yes, I'm excited. I also feel like I need to warn a little bit. It's cycle day 3 for me. So I've had my 2 days of moon caving. So the words might not be wording on point today. I feel like we just need to normalize those things, like out of the moon cave and brain fogginess. So there we go. But that's okay because Beth's going to do most of the talking. Although I have just had a coffee, so it could go either way.
I love the lifetime modeling. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
So neat.
So I'm going to pass over to Beth to introduce herself and all the wonderful things that she does. At least I really messed that up. So Beth, what do you do and where do you come from?
Amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, just give me sort of a bat signal or a smoke signal if I start going off on some wild tangents, because that's always a risk any time of the cycle. So my name is Beth. I'm a neuroinclusion specialist. I essentially help individuals and organizations learn how to embrace their different ways of thinking, being, and processing, and find ways to really make that work for them, with them, in all of the best, most positive, neuro-affirming ways possible. So that is done through coaching, through consulting, and through speaking opportunities. I absolutely love it. It's a huge part of my own personal experience. And so, of course, being neurodivergent, I then had to go and make it not just my personality, but also my profession. So that's how that came to be. But yeah, I've been working almost exclusively in the neurodivergent communities now for about 6 years. And it's honestly an absolute delight. And it's something that, for me, every single day I get the absolute blessing and privilege of being able to learn with and support incredible people. And it's something that I learn from every day as well. So I never like calling myself an expert, because I can only ever be the expert in my own experience. And I know a lot about a lot of other stuff in and amongst these topics, but that certainly does not make me the expert in someone else's lived experience. So I very much like creating space and holding the microphone to other people and helping them to figure out how to build and develop the skills in which they can then learn how to hold boundaries, advocate, communicate, and do all of those wonderful things for themselves. That's a little bit about me. Where do I come from? All that's going on in my head when you said that was the Cotton Eye Joe song, by the way, and I have to own that. That's a little line dance in my head.
I had more of a Cilla Black situation in my head.
And mate, now I have that too. Amazing. So
at least your background doesn't have to be your physical location. I feel like I need to really refine that down for Spicy Brains.
At least, yeah, maybe for the literal thinking processes, for sure. So I'm actually from the southeast. I have a very sort of classic late diagnosed history in a way. So I was never picked up on as being neurodivergent. When I was growing up, I was classified as a gifted and talented kiddo. So there was an enormous amount of sort of performance anxiety and, of course, all the pressure that comes along with it. And I did all right in school. I did pretty well. And I always remember struggling a lot more than everyone else seemed to think I did, but there never often seemed an opportunity to really talk about that, or felt seen and heard in any of those attempts to express that. So it kind of paved the way for a lot of compensating and mushing things together and figuring stuff out and masking through a lot of those years. I managed to get to university, and I actually nearly got kicked out of university in my first year because a lot of my lectures were super early. Yeah. Super early in the morning. I had no time management skills whatsoever, and I was really struggling. And I was actually a scholarship. I was on a scholarship, so I had to hit this X amount of attendance. Otherwise, I, you know, would have been kicked out. So I got these like very angry emails that obviously I ignored until I really had to deal with them. And then I went to the sort of pastoral meeting and I just completely broke down. You would have thought at that point the word neurodivergence might have been thrown around. No, no.
No.
No, mental health challenges absolutely were. And so after I had kind of expressed some of these difficulties, even though I still didn't have the language for it, they were like, oh, well, now we know we can do something about it. Great, brilliant. So they put some support in place, and I was very, very fortunate that they did that. And I actually managed to sort of muddle my way through, which was fantastic. So managed university, but studied something completely different, English and American literature and drama and theatre studies. Loved it. And then I was going to do a master's. The master's unfortunately didn't run because it was quite a niche one, so they didn't get enough applicants. Fine, took it as a sign, moved back home, was like, what do I do with my life now? Started working in a gym to pass the time. I actually really enjoyed it. The diversity, the opportunity to move myself was abundant. So I actually thrived in that environment, funnily enough. Met a psychiatrist there, and again, that was essentially the beginning of where I am now. So there was a contextual point to that big background story. Basically, me working with the psychiatrist then led to essentially what I do now. So I was the practice manager for him for a good 3 years. And whilst I was doing that, we then finally discovered my neurodivergence, because I sat there and I said,
not that it hadn't been screaming before.
I mean, if you look back at my school reports, if you look back at my social history, it's like ADHD, probably autism as well. But, you know, absolutely was completely, everyone was like, what? No, nothing. So then I will never forget this conversation. I sat there and said, gosh, isn't it really interesting that I seem to be really similar to all of the people that you're positively assessing with ADHD? And you know, when you see someone look at you like,
Glad you caught up then.
exactly that. So that was my kind of penny drop moment. And that was, yeah, coming on for possibly five or so years now. And it's been a huge learning journey ever since. So
Yeah.
kind of paved the way to where I am and what I do, which is essentially a blend of all of that lived experience stuff together with all of my coaching and speaking and consulting skills that I've developed over those last few years to do what I do now.
Do you know, and this is why I handed it over to you. I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you know where you are in your cycle?
Not a clue. Absolutely not a fogging. No. And honestly, I'm loving this conversation, because I like to say that I'm the epitome of why your work is so important.
Well, I was just thinking that was so on point. Like, I'm going to take a hedge a bet and be like, you're sort of early towards mid-cycle, like
yeah,
somewhere around then. If your period was about 2 weeks ago, I think I'm probably
yes, you are quite right.
I'm just like, that was on point. The words were clear. The words were wording. She's bringing mid-cycle energy, like compared to me, and I just feel like a slug in bright colours. A verbal slug.
A slug in bright.
But I love what you do. I love how you framed it all, and about like finding ways that work for like the individual is so closely aligned to like what I'm doing. And I mean, probably people already know. I mean, if you didn't know this about me, like, I'm spicy, very spicy. I got the tism, I got the twirly one. And so with my diagnosis, there's been a huge now sort of that overlap of like looking at how like hormones and neurodivergence intersect. And it's so definitely shapes I mean, it shapes everybody's experience of the world, you know, how our hormones work. But if you're neurodivergent, it will also shape your traits and the intensity to which you might feel them. And so having this conversation, I thought, would be really interesting with you, because I know it's been your world and your expertise for a while now, you know, looking at ADHD traits, and I thought, you know, let's talk around that body brain connection and what you're noticing as well. What has been your experience of your cycle, of your period? Is it something, I mean, I'm again hedging a bet that as you weren't quite aware where you are now, that perhaps, you know, there hasn't been a strong charting practice in your history, but at least, like, what's your relationship with your cycle and your period been?
What a great question. And I would say it's been a problematic long-term relationship, complicated situationship at best. It's been something that I am learning more so, I would say, in the last couple of years, to really try to embrace and love and approach with curiosity and compassion rather than frustration and judgment and avoidance. I've had quite a up and down journey, I would say, otherwise, with it. So yeah, I mean, you got the kind of cliff notes of my history, but if I'm looking at that through the hormonal experiences, then it's been a pretty rocky ride. It's been really challenging, and it's been, I would say, hugely impacted by quite a lot of different things that are also inherently linked to my neurodivergence as well. So not getting things picked up on throughout my earlier years led to a lot of challenges with things like emotional dysregulation, which would then become explosively challenging through the different aspects of my cycle. And because of the lack of awareness I had for such a long time, there was so much shame and embarrassment, and maybe to a certain extent fear as well of being able to talk about it. I mean, even if you'd have said to me 5 years ago, Beth, you're going to be on a LinkedIn Live publicly talking about your menstrual cycles, your experiences of neurodivergence, I would have withered up into a cringy, Paul, like, don't look at me. So the fact that even in just that short space of time, I can get to a position where I'm even able to have a public conversation about it is enormous. But it almost makes me sad that that's where we are in, society, that it's still something that's like, hush, hush, we don't talk about it, because that as well had a huge impact on me being able to get curious about my own and understand it. So I would say mine's been really complicated. I mean, I've attempted tracking it once. So if you actually look at my phone, like, health data, I think it's been about 1,000 days since I've had a period, according to that.
Too many steps to press the buttons.
It is, I'll be honest. It just didn't gel with my kind of, visual preferences and things. So I just found that really difficult. I can see the absolute value in it, and it's something that I want to do. But then that doesn't necessarily mean, as an ADHD, that that's something I can do without figuring out how to do that. So that's a really good example of how, for instance, our worlds collide in that way, because I haven't yet figured out how to work with my neurodivergence to find a way that works to help me track it and be aware of it. The other thing that I think is also really poignant to talk about are contraceptions and things like that. So I have been using different contraceptives for years because I used to get a lot of pain and dysregulation. So when I was younger and at school, the answer was, oh, just go on the pill and you'll be fine. So that's pretty much what I did. I would hedge a bet that that's probably wreaked havoc on my natural cycles, and that'll probably take me a lot of time to figure out and understand about myself. So I think that would be useful to explore later on down the line. And the other thing that I think about when I consider my experiences as well are also the other risk factors that are particularly poignant for neurodivergent communities to think about, because there was a period in my life where I was quite dramatically underweight, and I didn't have a period during that time.
Yeah.
Maybe about 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, because I had the implant, I thought it was that. And that was a really horrendous time in my whole kind of experience of menstruating and just, being a human in a menstruating body was really, really difficult for me back then, because I didn't know whether or not I was coming or going. My hormones were all over the place all of the time. It impacted how I felt about myself, how I felt about myself in the mirror, my relationship with myself and others. And I remember it got to a point where, after that period of time that had elapsed where I did not have one, I think I ended up having one for about, I don't know, like 14 days or something.
Wow.
And honestly, I thought I was going insane. I really, really did. So yeah, I've had a really complex experience. And it's refreshing to be able to have a space where we can explore that, to be like, let's talk about that. Let's help those experiences for other people.
100%. And there's lots of things that I relate to that. And it's interesting. I also just put in the comments, I put a link to I've got a neurospicy trait tracker, by the way, everyone. It's free. I've put that as a second message in case you're like, oh, but and I've also done it in a very neuro-friendly way where you can color things in. So it's like all a visual thing, but that's there if anyone wants it. If they're like, how do I do that? It's there. But what I would say is pre-diagnosis and really having a sort of idea around the menstrual cycle, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint those things and connect the dots as well. There are so many things I think that neurodivergent young people struggle with, especially if you're undiagnosed as well, because you don't really, again, you don't know, you can't account for the things, and so that you assign what's happening to the wrong thing. Like you've assigned your like not having periods to your implant. I also experienced 10 years of eating disorders in my late teens to sort of late 20s. A little bit of for masking reasons, a little bit because of sensory sensitivities, lost a huge amount of weight. I think though we can be very susceptible to those kinds of things, and then losing periods as well. There's also a lot to be said about there's a lot to be said about everything you just said. My brain's trying to say them all at the same time though, so bear with. I find for undiagnosed people, there's probably going to be two key areas that are really going to play up. The premenstrual phase. If you've got ADHD, you're 3 times more likely to struggle also with PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is not just like really bad PMS. It's like a whole thing in its own right. It's really like impactful in your day to day. It lasts the duration of your premenstrual phase, and key, it will probably almost disappear with the first day of your period, which is quite a good tell to know if that is the case or not. But it's really debilitating, and your emotional regulation will be just fire the whole time. The other two key places that might be really difficult in the cycle is as estrogen rises in the second half of your cycle, which is the case for me. I'm particularly estrogen sensitive, and my spicy does not play well with that rise. Rather than feeling like the nice peak and rise, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. So you're putting an overstimulated state on an overstimulated person. It's just like, again, fire. So those are the key things that I see in people that I speak to that like don't have that kind of awareness. They might know that before their period is quite bad, after their period is quite bad, and we sort of pick around it and sort of normally find that it is one of those two reasons. And I think it's really helpful then to just join the dots. And it's different for every person. You've met one neurodivergent person, we're all different, our traits show up differently. we all have those different spiky profiles and things, which is where the charting, let's get out of the idea, I say this all the time, out of the idea of tracking when your period or tracking to know when your period is going to arrive.
Yes.
Oh, the coffee is hitting slug brain, and it's like that half the end of the sentence is coming out before the middle. I regret my choices. But yeah, so it's really helpful. And if we get away from period tracking to energy mapping, and this is the thing that I like harp on about all the time. It's cool to know when your period is going to arrive, and you will know that by default. But what we want to get into as neurodivergent people is energy mapping, understanding how our energy fluctuates and shifts, and how we can use that more effectively, but also how we can safeguard ourselves and our energy.
Oh, I'm
all out.
Yeah, well done. Top job. I was laughing because I was really resonating. There are so many times, all of my clients will know me very well, where I'll just be like, words, they're all trying to come out at once, and that's fine. We'll just have to figure that out. Also happens when I get excited. If I get like really excited, there's like, word vomit. Anyway, lovely little side note there. But yes, energy mapping is huge. And I think that links beautifully to a point that we were talking about when we were chatting around the kind of points that we might have wanted to raise in this discussion around internalized ableism and the shame and the pressure that people put on themselves, because there is so much expectation that we should just have this linear performance all of the time. But the thing is, if we can understand, accept, and embrace that we will have fluctuating energy, and as a result of that and the various factors in play there, naturally have variety in the performance that we have and different needs across those different parts of our cycle, we can then start to challenge some of that ableism that kind of adds that pressure and expectation that we should actually have this linear performance. And that's a lot of the work that can be really powerful in the coaching space, is getting people to recognize how that belief system may be impacting their expectations on what they can do. Because you're absolutely spot on. We have very different and distinct needs that arise in the different areas of our cycle. And if we can energy map for that and approach with acceptance and self-compassion, then the overall output, as well as relationship quality with ourselves, is going to be phenomenally different.
Yeah, it so is. And it just reminded me when you were talking. So I was speaking to a client the other week, and we were talking around finding the best times for sort of productivity. And the word productivity was brought up a lot. So I was like, okay, let's like talk around this a little bit. Because I think in their mind, it was very much about learning when the best times are, so they can fit back in the box, the box of the grind culture. And I'm like, that's not the name of the game. It's finding out when you're, and I try to move away from the word productivity, but your optimum times are in your cycle for you to know how it's going to work best for you, not just so that you can fit back in to the neurotypical box or the grind culture. It's not to sort of then weaponize it against yourself. It's very much to sort of learn how to be compassionate and kind with yourself. And I would say the more important part, I mean, everyone wants to know the bit like, when am I going to feel the best? But I think the more interesting part is to know, like, when is the time to pause, like when is best to safeguard yourself and your energy. That's more interesting, and that's where that kind of self-kindness and compassion creeps in.
Absolutely. And then do you often find that when you're exploring that particular area and you're talking about safeguarding, that, I don't know if it does for you, but possibly the word boundaries might then start coming up, and you start seeing I don't want to put a boundary in. Put me in the box. We're taking you out of the box. Stop putting yourself in the box. Boundary is another area that is a huge component for a neurodivergent experience, especially a late diagnosed or late identifying experience. That is another challenge for us. And we're doing some of this work, or we're holding space for people to do this work so that they can feel empowered and educated, and so not weaponize it against themselves, but actually learn how to hold boundaries against it, to continue keeping stuff safe, to sustain energy, to have a healthier lifestyle, and all of these amazing things, not to get back in the box. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, exactly that. And the thing is, so typically we're, as highly masking individuals, where, people pleasing is high up on that list. It's, and people pleasing is not just a personality trait. That is like like safety, like what am I trying to say? Like a trauma, almost like a trauma response. And we're trying to protect ourselves by adapting and appeasing, to the situation. Appeasing to the situation, you know what I mean. And so the thing is, it's really hard to set boundaries, because it's like, oh, what right do I have to say XYZ? But the thing is, when you chart and map your energy, that framework gives you the permission, because it's saying to you, okay, here you're going to feel probably your lowest energy, like this is like a 0 spoons time, like and so and that's not just made up stuff, that's science, that's what's happening in your body, that's hormones. So when you know when that time is, it's like, actually, now it's non-negotiable for me. That gives you permission to set a boundary, because otherwise I feel like sometimes it's like, oh, I can't just say no. What's the reason I'm saying no for? Or who am I to say no to that? But actually, when you have, when you're trying to set a boundary and you have permission to do that from someone else, it's much easier to say that. And you can take that same cue from your cycle, from your energy mapping, to know, actually, this is the time where I know like spoons are going to be lowest. So actually I can't do that right now. That's your permission to set the boundaries. And that's what's been so like helpful for me. And I know all the people that I have lovingly suggested / forced. Oh dear.
I completely agree. Yes, I think one of the common misconceptions in the sort of coaching world is that we're giving you the answers, or we're telling you what to do, and we most certainly aren't. We can't, because that wouldn't be ethical or coachy. But I really do resonate that there are definitely those occasions when you're like,
I want to do the thing.
And no one helped you. So I can totally understand, with specifically in accordance with the energy mapping work. Yes, there are many occasions where I can definitely resonate with various client experiences where I thought, yeah, this would really help you. I can't tell you to do it, but do it.
So I guess, like, from your experience, if someone is finding that habit difficult because of the too many steps, and bearing in mind this isn't your habit yet either. So like how, like, I've designed the trait tracker as a neuro spicy friendly way. There's coloring boxes, like I always say, like, habit stacking is great, or stack it with something that, when you go to bed, for example, that's when the habit stack that I try to do. I get to bed, I get my clipboard out, I color in my boxes. But is there anything else that you're like, if someone's like finding it difficult to like build that habit, a habit that they know is going to be really beneficial for them, are there any like other additional things that you would add?
Absolutely, yes. I'm so glad you asked. So it's about learning what motivates you, because we all have different motivators, and I quite frankly hate the word motivation because it's so misunderstood and so thrown around. Like, this idea that you should just be motivated can get in the bin.
Yeah.
Neurodivergent systems are primarily interest-based, because of the different ways in which we're built, essentially, and the different sort of ways in which the neurotransmitting chemicals are firing in our brain. And I would warmly welcome someone perhaps more sciencey to explain that in detail. But for the most basic of understanding within this context right here, right now, we're interest-based. And we have different things that motivate us. Every single person does. So when I'm exploring this within a coaching realm, for instance, and someone's like, oh, why am I not doing the thing? It's often because they're getting stuck in things like, you know, task paralysis or overwhelm, or having some other kind of executive functioning difficulty, which is layered on top of not understanding their core motivators and drivers, which then makes a whole bunch of sense of why the doing of the thing is not happening. So being able to understand that is going to be really, really helpful, because generally speaking, we can't do things just because they're important. That would be lovely. That is a privilege, I'm going to argue, is a neurotypicals. So if anyone does struggle with things like overwhelm, task paralysis, PDA, you know, not wanting to do it, or, you know, having that fear-based response to being told to do the thing, etc., then I warmly invite everyone to get curious about core motivators and how they can use those to get those things done. So, for instance, we've got curiosity, novelty, urgency, challenge,
Nice.
competition, and figure out what your profile is, and then how you can then incorporate that into your task initiation. So, for example, I am quite a big competitor. Makes no surprise considering the whole gifted and talented growing up trying to prove my worth kind of situation. But I love competing with myself. I'll gamify something as much as I can, because then that makes it fun. There's a challenge, and then that adds the incentive to get me going. So because this is something that doesn't really have a deadline, I can't use urgency as much. So then I'm going to be looking at, how can I gamify this? How can I make this fun? How can I make this interesting for me, until I've built the habit? And then it's fine. Once I've built the habit, generally, I'm pretty good at sticking with something. So it's figuring out that creative way to get started that normally is really, really useful for people. And it's different for everyone. So that would be my recommendation.
That's so interesting. And I like the, I don't know, there's a few different acronyms, but I like NICE. So it's novelty, intrigue, challenge, and emergency / urgency. But that's like quite a good, yeah, I think for me, for my tracking to get it in a habit. So the urgency was that it was the end of the, I have to do it on the day because the day is ending.
I like that. Yeah, that's clever. I didn't even think about that. See, I just thought, oh, it's an open-ended thing. There's no urgency there because there's no deadline. But I like that it's the end of the day. So you've created urgency there.
And I also got pretty coloured pens to do my shading in. So yeah, maybe I think maybe like instead of motivators, we could just think about it as in, what are our joys?
Yeah, absolutely. What brings you joy?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
I didn't even realise 33 minutes slipped past us.
Wow. Wibbly wobbly things, doesn't it?
So there's two things I wanted. My brain's catching up with me.
Yes.
First of all, what have you noticed? So I think it's really interesting because despite I think people not having an idea of their neurodivergence or not having an idea of their menstrual cycle, we still have like intuition, we still know. Like, have you noticed that come up like in your code? Like, what are you noticing? Is there anything that comes up in your coaching with like struggles around like emotional regulation, things like with it throughout the cycle?
Yeah, huge. So when you say that, do you mean like my own personal experiences, or as a coach noticing and supporting?
As a coach that you've noticed, or like if it's more relevant with yourself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my brain first went to supporting others, and really interestingly, with my menstruating clients, there have been many a session where we've seen some phenomenal growth, etc. And then they'll have a session where they're catastrophizing, spiraling, struggling, and very blamey and very internalizing all of that. Like, yeah, I've been doing so well and we've been having amazing sessions, but it's just all gone wrong this week and everything did it. And I'm like, that's interesting. And then I'm like, okay. And where are you, out of curiosity, on your cycle? And you can kind of go, and you see him go, so it's something that I can notice, especially if I'm working, because I tend to work medium to long-term capacity with clients because I specialize in later identifying. So there's a lot of internalized ableism and shame, etc., to kind of unlayer and unmask around. And as a result of that absolute privilege, I get to learn, their patterns throughout that time. So I get to kind of see that emerge, and then that almost intuition kicks in and I can notice. And it's something that, unless you are consciously tracking it yourself, you're consciously directing awareness towards that thing to develop your awareness around it, which is really difficult, or can be rather difficult. Sometimes it does take for someone else to be able to go, what about that? How much could that be impacting this? What are your thoughts on that? And it's not for me to determine, of course, whether or not it does, but just asking that what or how question, throwing that observation in there, can normally make a really phenomenal difference to how they're engaging with that and how they're perceiving themselves through it. And that often has been really, really valuable for people to learn that actually your growth, your progress hasn't just completely deteriorated, fallen out of the window, gone off on a beaten track. It's all still there. We're here in our cycle, perhaps, and that's going to have an impact on you being able to recognize that growth or, connect to it as much, because that's where you're at in that moment. So I would say that's been really, really huge for a lot of people. And I can only imagine how much more amplified that would be working with you because of your additional specialist insights into it that you could add to that. Because I can't really go much further than that, of course. Like, I will literally say that's about as much as I can kind of explore with you. For the additional, learning and psychoeducation, people like Samantha are the people you want to be speaking to. So yeah,
it is interesting. And thinking about what I was saying earlier about it does tend to be in these two key times, either premenstrual or rising estrogen. And and this is why I think it's so important with the charting, so we can anticipate those times. And that's really the whole point of it. We set boundaries. We've got permission to set boundaries because that sort of cyclical awareness gives it to us. And then we can have we can anticipate a little bit when those dips are going to be, so you prepare for it. So because in all those cases it's rather blindsiding, like, why me? That's what we always come back to. Why me? I'm broken, something's wrong with me, I need to fix me. I'm not performing, but actually it's just our hormones doing a thing. And knowing that, I think, changes the internal dialogue around why me, to like, premenstrual phase is just a little bit of a phase, like, no drama, we'll just go light on tasks, it's a low spoons week, and then it will all change again. And that for me was huge, massive, I can't even tell you, in changing sort of my internal dialogue and being able to put boundaries in, which is why I'm just obsessed. Like,
it all should be, absolutely. And I think that's another really key point there to kind of bring up, is that shift from feeling blindsided and being reactive to intentional and proactive, and what that can do for your permission to set boundaries, your preparedness, your awareness, and how that can change your internal dialogue and your relationship with yourself. Because rather than thinking, why am I such a failure? It's this neutral thing that is happening because these are the hormones that I have, and that's okay. And I will do this. And that's cool. Oh, my goodness me. How amazing is that?
Oh my goodness. I'm excited. Okay, so we've gone a little bit over time, but it's okay because it was a really good conversation. Beth and I are going to be working together later this year. We're doing a workshop.
Oh,
Because we're both spicy as we have no details to give you immediately.
yeah.
But say, keep an eye, like if you're not, and if you're not, the algorithm's horrible at the moment, and I massively feel I am being definitely put down in the ranks because I say the word period, blood, vaginas, cervical mucus, like all the time, not LinkedIn friendly words. So if you could just like go to our profiles and then like tap the little bell that says get notified of every post, would massively appreciate it. And we are going to be doing a workshop that explores this in a lot more detail. So I'm excited about that.
Me too.
Beth, is there anything that you feel that you didn't get to say, and is there any way you want to direct people what you're doing, or
I feel like we've had a really comprehensive conversation. The only thing I will say is that please don't try to at me on my websites because both of them are currently being refurbished, which is not very helpful. Good timing.
they're going to be shiny and new soon?
Oh dear. So, but I'm really excited because I'm working with a web developer. So my new website should be live really soon in the next couple of weeks, and it looks amazing. I'm absolutely thrilled for it. So if anyone did want to reach out, connect with me or anything like that, then I would definitely say something like LinkedIn is probably the most direct way of being able to do that at the moment. But other than that, absolutely keep an eye out because this workshop is going to be, I think, really, really useful for people. And yeah, I've got some people in my community that are already really excited about it. So, happy dances. Yay.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Beth. We could just sit here. I know, because we've done it. We've sat and chatted for 2 hours. We'll get on for a half an hour call, we said. 2 hours later. So
we're still just going and going.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
So I'm going to, when my mouse comes back, we are going to end the stream. Thank you for joining us, everyone. See you soon.